ABCD!
Hey everybody, Three Gun Guy here. Today we're going to look at the process that I'm using to reload new brass from Alpha Munitions. Since this is new brass, we'll only perform some basic work on it in order to get it to be first fired. So what I'm going to do is take measurements and assess the quality, mandrel the neck for proper bullet tension. I'm going to chamfer inside and outside of the neck and then deburr. Seat CCI 400 primer. I'm not doing 450s for the first firings, or for new cases rather, but for first 1X firings and on, we'll use 450s. We'll talk about that later. I'm going to measure and load H4350 powder, and then I'm going to seat the bullet to my specific CBTO length, which I actually just found today. Now, as I said, this is new brass, so some of the things we are not going to do to it is we're not going to anneal it, resize it, dry tumble, trim, or weigh. We will do all of these things after we have fired it one time and it has had a chance to form to the chamber of my rifle. Now for the equipment, we'll use calipers for taking measurements. 21st century expander die body with the Sinclair expander mandrel, 0.263 inch because we're loading 6.5 Creedmoor. The Frankfurt Arsenal Case Prep Center and hand primer seating tool. The RCBS Charge Master Light, and in the Wilson 6.5 Creedmoor micrometer bullet seater. Again, this is just the equipment that we'll use for loading our new brass. Well, here we are. And remember, in my previous videos, I showed you that I had my process down on paper. I've actually changed this just a pinch going forward. I actually trim way up here after I clean the neck, OD, and ID and the primer pocket. I do trimming way up here. And we'll talk about that when we get into used first fired plus brass. But this is the process that I follow. This is the sheet that I made. And then remember, I also keep a stat sheet on the cartridges themselves from the batch. So out of this batch of 100, I will have a sheet. Now I've already loaded 40, but I just wanted to start fresh to show you. So I've got a blank sheet, and this will follow this brass through all the firing processes. And there'll be more of these sheets associated with this lot and more of these pages associated with this lot every time I fire these. So hopefully I'll get at least 15 firings out of each case, maybe more. So let's look at the first step, which is assessing the brass. Well, we're going to assess the brass, and really what I like to do is I like to pull about 10 cases out. So since we only have 60 here, I'll pull, let's pull 6 out. And what I like to do is take these 6, and then I run these measurements on them. Now, the measurements that I'm going to run here are concentricity, case length, shoulder length, the datum to the case head, web diameter, shoulder diameter, the neck OD, and neck wall thickness. So I will use these 2 calipers to make all those measurements. And then I will take the average of those and write that down for each one of these areas on this page. And for the concentricity, I'll go ahead and use the concentricity gauge, my Sinclair concentricity gauge. I don't know if I had that in my list. If I didn't, I am using it. So let me go ahead and do these 6, and then we'll see what's going on with them. Well, let's look at the concentricity. So out of my 6 cases, and folks, I have to tell you, this is alpha brass. This stuff is unbelievable from a quality perspective. So this is really just a cursory check. If you can see that dial there, uh, I'm rotating this in here. That thing's not moving a thousandth of an inch. Let me see if I can zoom in here on this so you can really kind of see what's going on here. And then I'll turn this to the camera. There you go. So really all we're doing is, I'm just making sure that on average, these cases are pretty much within specs. Here's one again, within a thousandths of an inch. Okay. So let me do these other two. Same thing. Pretty darn good. So right now I'll check the concentricity off and we'll move on to the next measurements. Well, from the measurement of these 6 cases, and I can tell you from reloading the first 300 of these cases, alpha cases, that it's pretty much standard measurements. That's why I just take a small sample. So basically these are all the new measurements across these cases. And again, as I said, it's pretty standard. I went ahead and put my lot down. It's usually just the brass. If it's alpha, it starts with an A. If it's Hornady, it starts with an H, the date, and then a -1 for this is the first lot on that date that I'm doing anything with. Then I put the primer, the powder, the charge grains. I do need to add CBTO to this sheet, which is what I want to do. And then any notes down below. On our checklist, I basically checked off some of the things that we're not going to do. We just checked the concentricity. The next thing that we'll do is I'll lube and mandrel these, and then we'll go from there. I'm not going to full length size these cases because there's no need to with this new brass. It's already within SAMI specifications, and we want the case to expand to the chamber with the first firing. I will do full length sizing when we reload these shot cases, and I'll use my multi-step process to do that. Now, as we saw in the case measurements, the neck across the sample group, so the diameter of the neck here, is 0.2885, okay? The wall thickness is about 14.5 thousandths of an inch, which if I take both sides of the neck, because that's what you have to do, that would give me 0.0290 for the thickness, overall thickness of the neck itself. When I subtract that, right, from the 5, 2, 4, 5, 9, 5. When I subtract that from the overall outside diameter, I get an inside diameter. This is the ID right now of this brass neck of 0.2595. Okay, so that is the inside diameter of this neck. Now, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to seat a bullet that is 0.2640 inches in diameter. So if I subtract this 2595 from that, that would give me 0.0045 inches, or about 4.5 thousandths inches of tension. That's not too bad, and some guys just load up and do that, okay? I want a little less neck tension, even with new fired brass, so I'm going to mandrel this brass one time, and I'm using a 0.263 mandrel. So that's going to expand this brass from its current inside diameter of 2595 to a new inside diameter of 0.263. Now you're going to have some spring back when you expand this. It's going to expand, then it's going to come back in a little bit. And we'll talk about why I double mandrel when I reload fired brass. But I don't care about that right now. So we'll probably end up with a neck tension of somewhere between 1.5 and 2 thousandths of an inch. And that's really what I want to do. Again, I don't have to do this if I don't want to. I just like doing it with new fired brass because I do practice with this stuff. And if I'm practicing out to 800 yards, even with new brass, I want to still have something that's going to be fairly accurate. So let's go ahead and do the mandreling. Well, let's expand these necks. So I've got my 21st century expander die body, and then I've got the Sinclair carbide mandrel for 6.5 Creedmoor, which is a really 0.263 mandrel. So if you remember, the neck OD was 0.2885, and we just said here that the inside ID that we just calculated from that is 0.2595. We're going to expand that out, and when we're done with it, we will have an external ID, an outside ID of 0.2910. So you see, we will have expanded it out from that. When we subtract the wall thickness of the neck, we'll end up with 0.2620. We're going to load a 0.264 bullet. So what is that? What neck tension does that give us? Gives us 2 thousandths of an inch. So I'm not going to do all 6 of these. We're just going to run the 6 through our process. But again, I use my graphite powder, bullet, mandrel, come back out, and then I use a rag to clean the outside neck so I don't get graphite all over there. And that's really what I do. I run all the cases through that, and now we end up with nice expanded necks. And the next step for the 6 cases is going to be to chamfer and deburr. So for that, I'm going to use the Frankfurt Arsenal Case Prep Center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a quick inside, outside chamfer, and then I'm going to run them over my brush here to clean that neck out. So that'll take a little bit of that graphite dust off of that neck. So let's go ahead and just run one. Just a little. I don't use a lot of pressure. It looks like Alpha does a little bit of chamfering, but after I go ahead and run them on that expander die, I still like to do a little bit of chamfer. There we go. There we go. So that step is complete. Now let's talk about this next step, seeding primers. So I mentioned to you that I'm going to seed a CCI 400 primer in new brass. The reason, from what I've been told from the pros that I have shot with, is that new brass, which will be smaller in the chamber, a heavier primer like a CCI 450 may not fire because the firing pin doesn't have enough punch. In other words, the cartridge is small lengthwise, and what's going to happen here is when you load this cartridge into the chamber, it hasn't formed to the chamber yet. So when the firing pin hits it, the cartridge can nudge up a little bit, and with a heavier 450 primer, it may not have enough strength to ignite the primer. A buddy of mine told me that he loaded 450s in new brass, and about 1 to 2 out of every 10 rounds was a no fire. So that's why he and everyone else, and now I, load a 400 primer in these new rounds. So with that being said, again, I just use the Frankfurt Arsenal priming tool and bring that back. I've got it set the right where I want it, and there we go, we're primed. I checked the depth of the primers. This tool is seating my primers about 2/1000th of an inch deep, 2 to 3 thousandths of an inch deep, which is just fine for me. And so we will finish this part of the process and move on. Well, we're ready to load powder now. I always have a little cup here with some grains in it just to top off if I need to. I'm using an RCBS Chargemaster Lite, and basically what I like to do is charge the cases and then move them over to a totally different holder so I know those have been charged. Can't tell you how many times I've turned around, done something else, come back, and when I load the charge, it fills this funnel up because I'm double loading. But we won't do that this time. And I am going to load 41 grains of H4350. So let's go ahead and go with that. And I'm not going to show you me loading all or pouring all 6 of these. We'll just go with this one and then we'll move on to the bullet seating. So, the scale has been pretty good to me. I do have another scale on order. I'm ordering the A&D FX 120i reloading scale with the auto throw and auto trickler. But for now, this thing seems to be working pretty good. Let's take her off here. Now, I will tell you another thing that I do. When I reload, if I'm feeling confident in the scale, which last night I was, so I'll put it on auto mode. If I'm not, then I will just do manual the whole time. But last night I let it warm up for quite a while, probably about an hour, and it seemed to work really well. So let me finish loading these out, and then we'll come back to seating the bullets. Well, it's time to seat our 6 bullets. So what I'm going to use here is the Wilson stainless steel micrometer top bullet seater. That's a mouthful, but basically what you have here is you have the bullet seater base, you have the bullet seater die body, and then you have the cap. And what we're going to do here is we're going to take one of our cases that has powder in it. Make sure you take a case that has powder in it. We're going to place it on the base. We're going to set it in here, and then we're going to insert a bullet. Now, I make sure that I handle the bullets by the tip. I try not to get any of my oils from my hands on the base of the case, or base of the bullet. Then I'm going to drop that in there. I'm going to put the cap on and let it just rest on that bullet. And then we're going to use a K&M press with a gauge on it, and this gauge is in pounds. That's all it is. It's not foot pounds, inch pounds, or any of that. It's simply pounds. And what I want you to do is please watch the gauge as I seat this bullet. In fact, I'm going to swing this over here so you can see the gauge. And here's what you're going to see. You're going to see that as I seat the bullet, so my tripod will settle down there. As I seat the bullet, we're going to see a break point. And what that is that's going to be the initial break of the bullet getting past the friction of the case. And when we see that, right there, you saw it at about 65 pounds. And then you'll see it break a little more, and I'm just taking it all the way around. I usually hold it there for a minute until the bullet seats. And now when I take this out, come on, we have our seated bullet. Now, if we look at the ogive of this, remember I said the ogive length CBTO that I'm looking for is somewhere around 2.1135, and I've got 2.114. So we're really, really on target with this. And basically, again, these are new cases, so I'm not worried too much about that. But it's nice. It's nice to put things exactly how they should be. Now, What I want to talk to you about here is that remember we mandreled these necks, right? And if you take your new brass and you don't mandrel these, this gauge could go all the way around. You might have to apply a whole lot of pressure to this thing to seat the bullet. Is that dangerous? It can be, but I've had this thing go around to about 150 pounds before, and I didn't see any pressure signs when I fired those rounds at all. Now I'm going to do this again slowly. Another bullet. See if we can up break right there. Break was about the 70 mark. And here's the thing, as I just said, on new bullets, new cartridges, not a big deal. When I'm reloading my first fired and on brass, that is a big deal to me, because if this gauge gets, if I'm breaking it between 60 and 70, and all of a sudden I get a cartridge that breaks at 30, I will use that for target practice. If I get one that goes around to say 100 and breaks, I'll use that for target practice. We want consistency. Now, some folks I see comments that say, "Oh, why are you going through all this?" And blah. You're absolutely right. If you're going to take these cartridges and shoot out to 300 yards, maybe even 400 yards, this probably isn't something you need to mess with. But if you're going to be in a match shooting out to 1,000, 11, 1,200 yards, this is another one of those variables that, excuse me, that you don't want to interfere with your precision. So anyway, there we are. We've seated the bullets. One other thing I wanted to go over was marking your brass. Now, if you're using some cheapo brass and you really don't care about it, that's fine. But this is alpha brass at about $1 a case, and I want to reuse this more than once. So really all I'm doing here is I'm using my Concentricity base, and I just sit here with my marker and mark this on. Blue indicates this is new brass, and then all that'll come off once you run it through the, when you tumble it. And then future cases, first fired plus brass has red bands on it. So anyhow, I just want to show you, there's a lot of cool little devices out there that'll do this. But you know what? Since I already had the Sinclair thing here, I thought, I'm going to save some money and just do it like this. So anyway, little tip. Hope it helps. Well, and here's our 6 finished cartridges. So, we know that this alpha brass is within SAMI specs. We did some measurements before we started loading it. And there's one last measurement we need to look at though, right? This is the cartridge overall length. This is this length right here. So, if I take this caliper and I measure this, now remember we're loading Hornady ELD-Ms, right? I get 2.1 or 2.7935, which is certainly within range between 2.7 and 2.825. So there's the final check to make sure that yes, indeed, we are in SAMI specs for the overall length. I'm going to put it into a magazine just to make sure. And yep, I can see that I've got plenty of room here. All right. So there's our first 6 cases loaded. Let's go over what we did. So what we did is we assessed our brass. We took some measurements. We filled out our 2 sheets. So now on this sheet right here, I can mark bullet seated done, and we're finished. We did our workup sheet for the cartridge itself. And now we have this as a reference. So when we fire these rounds, these next 60 rounds, we'll be able to enter that information here. And then when we resize them to what we need them to be to fit our chamber, we can put all that information here and then any notes down below. So we took our measurements, we mandreled the neck for bullet tension, less bullet tension. We chamfered the inside and outside of the neck and deburred. We seated a CCI 400 primer because this is new brass. We didn't want to use a 450. And then we seated the bullet to my specific CBTO length. Now, let's talk about that for just a second, because the cartridge-based ogive length, that my target length is 2.1335. Now you can see right here, this is 2.1215, right? So it's not exactly what I'm wanting it to be. Don't chase your CBTO on new brass. Don't do it. You're going to drive yourself crazy. This is a very good, the 2.1335 is 40 thousandths off the lands for my rifle. So what's this? Now it's 45, 50 thousandths off. Okay, it doesn't matter. These ELD-Ms love to jump. So it doesn't matter to me. This is a new case. I'm not going to use this in a match. I'm going to use this to practice positions and probably out to 500-600 yards. So honestly, don't go chasing these numbers with new brass. That's the biggest piece of advice. What we did not do is we didn't do any annealing, full length resizing, dry tumbling, trimming, or weighing. We don't need to do that stuff with full brass. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll put one out for first fired brass, hopefully in the next couple weeks. Thanks for watching, everyone, and shoot straight.